Yeah, pretty flat. Hi, I'm Grant Nelson. This is my dog Bailey, and welcome to Mustache Off Grid. Boom! Got her! That was pretty sick, man. I've been trying to do one of these things. Hey, come on, man. Been trying to do one of them things, but the ball's flat right now. He bit it too many times. So, anyway, I'll get into the video here. What are you doing? Sit. Come on, buddy. Sit. Alright guys, we got the same deal as last week. If we can get 20 likes and 5 subscribers on this video particularly, then I'll give Bailey a treat on next week's video. So if we can get 20 likes or 5 subscribers on this video that you're watching today, we'll give Bailey a treat at the end of next week's video. Hi guys, it's Grant Nelson again here with the Mustache Off-Grid YouTube channel. In case you're new to the channel, I live off-grid in southern Missouri, and I live in a one-room cabin off-grid, and I cover different off-grid and homesteading topics each week. This is my Tuesday talk show, and if you like trick shots, you like dogs, you like farm animals, and you want some educational homesteading videos, feel free to throw a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Anyway, I'll get into the topics today a little bit. First thing I wanted to talk a little bit about in my topics, just to give you guys an update on what I'm working on, is I'm planning this week. This is kind of my agenda this week, what I'm working on. So the first thing that I'm doing is I've got one more log to move down the hill. It's not really a log. I'll throw a video in this video here just to show you what I'm doing. All right, we got the chain hooked up here to the cable. Ironically, this chain and cable were on the property when I bought it. So when they were clearing that section up there before I bought it, they must have used it. But you can see how it's hooked up here to the bumper. But anyway, one more log to move down the hill for the log cabin. I'm at about 30 logs right now. I think I'm going to need about 5 more to have enough to build the cabin. So I'm working on that right now. And then the next thing that is on the agenda is putting in fencing down there. Where I cleared all the trees and got all the logs from for a pig pen. So that's on the agenda. And I'm going to use an electric fence, but I'm also going to run a woven wire fence as well. So I'll probably make a video on that. So if you're looking for a video on learn how to fence, that'll be out in the future here. And then the last things that are on my list are to fix my lawnmower, fix the headlight on my car, because I smoked a deer with it. Not in the smokehouse. I actually hit a deer with the driver's side headlight, and I think the deer was okay, but the headlight broke, so got to get a new one put in. So those things are all on the agenda this week, and that's kind of what I'm working on. So one thing I'll say, talking about the logs for the log cabin, if anyone's building a log cabin and they have this thought in their head that they're going to build a log cabin by hand, just realize that the logs are heavy. I imagine that the people back in the 1800s, if they were out there by themselves, probably used as small logs as they could do by hand, unless they had horses and oxen, and most people did. But some people didn't. So I imagine, you know, they probably used, you know, logs probably like that back in the day, maybe 8 to 10 inches, because they're heavy. I'll tell you, a 20-foot log that's, you know, maybe 18 inches wide, so, you know, diameter wise, I mean, a 20-footer is going to be heavy as can be. I'm doing my cabin, planning to do it 15 by 15 roughly, and these 15, 16-foot logs that I've been cutting are extremely heavy and hard to move. I have a video on moving them, primitive leverage, moving logs with primitive leverage. Recently, I've had a I have some metal cable, and it came on the property. It was just laying out here when I bought the place. But I used that to pull up one last log the other day, just because it was a little bit faster. I just pulled it up the hill and I just put it on the side, because I'm just trying to get the logs out of that section so I can start on the fencing, because that's a higher priority. So I've been pulling a couple up the hill with the metal cable, and I hooked it to the back of my truck. So I might make a video pulling the last one out, but it's really a tree that's leaning on another tree, because I cut it, and when it fell, it's leaning against another tree, so you got to kind of pull them down. I've winched a couple out with just like a ratchet, but it's a lot faster just pulling them out with the truck and a cable, being I have those two things. And I just want to get to the section where I can finish building this pig pen, because that's a higher priority than the log cabin. So I've got pig pen, log cabin on the priority list, 1, 2. And if you're going off grid and you go out to your land and you've got this list of different things that you want to work on, projects and stuff like that, which you're going to have that. If you're out on your land, you're going to say, man, I'd like to build a water catch right there, or I'd like to build a smokehouse. You're going to have all kinds of projects that you want to work on, and prioritize which ones are the most important first. You know, that's one thing, that's my word of advice on it. Some people go out there and they kind of work on things, you know, on and off. You know, they'll work on just random stuff, but prioritize your tasks that you're working on. Especially if you're coming in the wintertime, you're definitely going to want to prioritize your winter prep, you know, over anything else. So anyway, that's just a couple things right there. Being I'm working on a pig pen, I was going to talk a little bit about pigs and their importance. And one thing about pigs is they don't need a huge amount of space to raise them. Mine are going to have a huge amount of space, because eventually I'm going to turn it into sheep pasture, and I want the pigs to go in there and eat out all the roots and clear up the ground. And one thing about pigs is they will tear up the ground. And a lot of people back in the day, if you've got nice silt soil and stuff, and you're not on too big of an incline and things like that, they use the pigs to till up their fields. As they go out there, the pigs will really tear it up and stamp it down, and they would use the pigs a lot of times to till up their field. My neighbors do that, and I know some of the Amish and people like that around use pigs to till up their garden sections and things like that. So something to consider is kind of using pigs almost as a rototiller on your homestead. They'll eat out the roots. I've heard people also talk about if you've got a pond that's not sealed and it's draining water, I've heard people say, well, if you put your pigs in there, they'll stamp it down and it'll hold water. So I don't know 100% on that, but I've heard that from quite a few of the old timers out this way. So one, you can use pigs for tilling up your land, clearing land, especially if you just went through and you cleared a bunch of trees and you've got all these stumps. The pigs can really help you clear some of that out or make it more manageable for pasture land for sheep or cattle, or even farming land or gardening land. They'll go through there and they'll just eat all the underbrush, tear it up, and they can be really useful for clearing land without heavy machinery, because otherwise you're going to have to get a bulldozer, push those stumps, you're losing all the good topsoil. You know, pigs are very good at doing the job for you, and they're probably a lot cheaper as well. So that's one thing to consider if you're looking at getting any pigs on your homestead. Another thing about pigs is the lard. The lard that the pigs produce. I believe that that's probably one of the reasons that pigs have always been a very popular animal. Initially, one, they're pretty hard-nosed, I guess you could say, pretty durable, but they produce lots of lard. You know, one pig can produce probably, I would guess, 50 pounds plus of lard. And fats in primitive cultures are one of the hardest things to come by, which I mentioned a little bit in some of my foraging videos and things like that. And you think about cooking oil, olive oil, canola oil, you know, grapeseed oil, maybe, I don't know, whatever kind of oils you guys use, sunflower oil, peanut oil. Most of those oils are pretty unhealthy for you. Olive oil, you know, it's debatable. I use some olive oil here and there. But the dog's under the table. He's messing with me here. But anyway, those things are kind of hard to produce, especially some of those products and things. I mean, you got to get a press. You got to really break the stuff down. You got to kind of separate the sugars and stuff. It's a very processed procedure, and plants as they come, you know, they don't have a ton of fats in them, and the fats and oils you get out of them are just a little different than the stuff you get from animal fats. The amino acids and things like that just aren't the same. So, you know, pigs are probably, in my opinion, or any animal really that you render the fat down. You could do beef tallow or things like that as well. But animal fats are one of the better and easier ways to get cooking oil, because I cook everything myself with lard for the most part. I fry everything in lard. That's just what I use to cook in my cast iron. Everything tastes better in it. But it's an easier process, and it's something that you can produce to get fats and oils for cooking much easier than some of these seed oils. It would be hard to get to a point that you can make your own seed oil. I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm just saying that it almost seems like a pig as an animal, you know, is meant to provide that fat and oil for cooking, because it's just such a perfect, it's so easy. You feed the pig grows, you butcher the pig, you render the fat, and all you do to render the fat is literally just boil it down in a big pot. And you get some pork rinds, which are real good. But then you just drain that oil through a screen or something into jars, and you've got yourself cooking oil for a year plus, you know, just from raising one hog. So that's one of the things too, with the price of groceries and the price of some of these cooking oils. It's really getting to a point where you're going to want to be able to produce your own fats and cooking oil. Cooking oil is important for stir fries and everything else. I mean, most things that we eat, if you're, you know, cooking in a pan, you can cook with butter. But if you don't have a dairy animal, you know, you kind of need something that's going to help it not stick to the pan and add some flavor to the meal. You know, I could go on and on about using lard as a cooking oil, but the point is that pigs produce a lot of lard, and it's one of the easier animals to get a bulk amount of cooking oil, and cooking oil / lard. That's what I'm counting them as, because I use lard as my cooking oil from one animal. Another thing about the lard that it's been used historically as a preservation method as well. It's not just a cooking oil, but a lot of people do like a potted meat, and historically, you know, people would cook their meat in a pan or whatever, They'd cook their meat, put it down in a jar or a crock, and pour hot lard over the meat, and you've got your meat air sealed at that point. I like to use the canning jars, and if you put the lid on with that hot lard, it'll seal as the lard cools down. But I did my deer sausage in that last year. I had a video on it. Actually, I have videos on the channel of canning deer sausage in hot lard. So if it's something you're interested in the process and looking for an alternative canning technique for meat, that's one of the easier ways to do it. And I've used that deer sausage up to 8 months plus after I canned it. I ate it all now. And it's coming into the season. I'll probably get another deer soon, but the point is that you can use lard for preserving meat as well, and it's one of the better ways to do it. Cook your meat, you know, maybe brine it, salt it, cook it, put it down in a jar, pour that hot lard over it, seal it, and you've got an easy way to preserve your meat. So not only is it good as a cooking oil, easy calories to keep on hand for survival situations, things like that. But also you can preserve your meat, and you could probably preserve vegetables and things with it as well. I haven't looked into that as much, but you probably can. It just forms an airtight seal. That's all it does. Obviously, if you're doing something like that, make sure your jars are real sterilized and clean and everything like that. And then last, you know, obviously the pig produces meat, and it's really good meat because it's got all that fat in it. Pork chops and things like that. One of my favorite foods, honestly. I'd like to produce more sheep for my meat in the future, and less pigs. I'd like to get to a point where I'm just doing like one feeder hog a year, get like 100, 200 pounds of, you know, do a couple feeder hogs, get a bunch of lard and some pork, and then do lamb for most of my meat that I eat, and just cook it with that lard. You could probably render the sheep fat as well, but they have a different taste to their fat. It's not a gamey flavor, but it's just different than anything you'd come across. And if you've ever ate lamb, you'd know I love lamb. I was raised up in Illinois, and we had 90 sheep, and my parents still have a lot of sheep up there, and it's something I know quite a bit about. And I love lamb, and I guess they call the older stuff mutton. But it does have a different taste than beef or pork. It's just got a very unique flavor to it. And the fat has that same unique flavor. And the fat, some people don't like it. Some people don't like the taste. I much prefer pork fat myself over lamb fat, but when done right, it can be some decadent stuff. Let's see here. What else do I have on the list here? I wanted to talk about the pigs, the importance of pigs, on the reasons to raise them. They don't need a lot of space, like I said, and they don't really need a ton of feed. I mean, most of the feed can come from the store. I'd like to get to a point that I'm growing the grains to feed them out myself, but it's a work in progress, and that's part of the reason for building the hog pen too. I plan to grow crops in that same section eventually and build a smaller hog pen in a separate spot. So hopefully I can grow my grains down where the hog pen's at. I'll actually move this camera here so you guys can see it. Down where the hog pen's at, down the hill there. Once I put the pigs in there, they clear the land, I'd like to grow grains in there eventually, and either grains or use it as extra pasture land, or a combination of the two. Another thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was dogs on a homestead. If you've never raised any animals before, and you're looking at going off grid, you've never raised a chicken, never raised a rabbit, never had a cow, never done any farm stuff before, and if you've never had a pet, so you're wanting to go out to the land and raise all these animals and you've never raised an animal before, I think a dog is a good place to start, especially if you're going by yourself. They're a good friend, good companion, make you feel like you're not alone. And I know myself, with Jesus Christ in my life, that I'm never alone. But it's just nice to have a physical presence with you, and just a friend to hang out with. And dogs can be a good, a, you know, good thing for that. Good social animal. They call them man's best friend for a reason, because they're going to be loyal to you. Truthfully, probably more loyal than any human would be to you. I'm not saying there isn't family members and people that might be pretty loyal, but a dog's pretty loyal to its owner. I know mine is. And it's a good friend. It teaches you good responsibility and how to raise an animal. The responsibility of feeding and watering it every day. The responsibility of taking care of it. The responsibility that you need to figure out what you're going to do with it when you leave town. It's just a good animal to start with. And that way you learn a little bit about how animals act. And they're all a little different, but generally speaking, I think it's a good way to teach someone responsibility. I think starting small with small animals too, like rabbits and chickens and things like that, are a good place on a homestead too. Teach you responsibility. They're pretty easy to take care of, probably pretty similar to a dog. But I think a dog's a good place for responsibility if you've never raised any of those animals. Another thing about dogs is they provide a security aspect to your homestead, especially if you have the right one. I specifically got mine for security. He's got some aggression issues, and I specifically got him because he had aggression issues. And I said, yeah, no one's going to come on my property because my dog will keep him off it. And he's come a long way since then. He's still very aggressive to anyone that's not me. But you can sleep at night knowing that if anyone's coming in your yard or anything like that, your dog's gonna start barking. He's gonna take care of it. Mine does a really good job keeping a lot of predators out of my yard, honestly. Like the cleared space that I live in, of probably like an acre or two there, and then I've got all the 10 acres of woods. He really circles the perimeter very well, and keeps like raccoons and possums and bobcats and coyotes and things like that out of my yard. He actually one day chased a coyote up from down by the pond, right up through here. So I mean, he does a really good job deterring predators. Sometimes other dogs have come around and he chases them off as well, which is good because I've got rabbits and chickens, and those predators will come around and try to eat and kill those things. And I'm not saying that he's perfect. I mean, but he does a good job keeping the predators down. But one thing that some people forget with a dog is that they're a predator themselves, and so are we. We've got eyes in the front of our head, and all predators have eyes in the front of their head scientifically. So you study like a bear, a dog, a cat, all the predator animals have eyes in the front of their head, and all the prey animals have eyes on the side of their head, like sheep, goats, chickens, rabbits. They all have eyes on the side of their head, and all the prey animals have it on the side. Predator animals have it on the front. So just something to know. And I learned a lot about that from fur trapping, because we're trapping predator animals, and you kind of study their anatomies and how they react to certain situations. And some people wouldn't agree with me, but I consider it an art. Being able to get a specific animal to step in a spot on the earth that big, and you being able to lure it into a section and get it to instinctually set its foot, in a spot, the size of maybe a $50. It's a lot harder than people think, and there's a lot of tricks and things to it. I know I have a video on fur trapping for beginners, but there's more to it than just that video. Studying the animals and how they react to certain situations is really interesting. But anyway, dogs are predators themselves. My dog has killed a chicken or two, so I had to deal with that. I had to make sure the chickens were protected from him. Over the years, he's gotten more used to them, and I've made sure that I trained him not to do that, as well as with the rabbits as well. You know, he used to bother with the rabbits, and now that they're there, he never bothers them at all. I feel comfortable, you know, having him around him. He doesn't bother him anymore. He knows that he's not supposed to mess with them. It is kind of funny though, when I first came out here, he would chase all the wild rabbits, and now that he knows that my rabbits he's not supposed to do that, he doesn't chase the wild rabbits anymore. So that's kind of one of the animals that he doesn't, you know, chase out of the property. And they have been a little bit of a problem in my garden and stuff, the wild rabbits. So I kind of wish some of those wild rabbits he would, but I'm also thankful that he doesn't mess with my rabbits. So anyway, you know, some dogs are going to have some training to do with your animals as well. You know, and some dogs just instinctually can't be trained. You know, there's some that just, it's in their instincts to chase cattle around. You know, like you get an animal like a cattle dog, and they just instinctually have a herding instinct, or a blue heeler. They call them a blue heeler because they bite the heels on the livestock. They literally use them for herding livestock back in the day. So something to consider with the dogs you get. A lot of people like these, I believe, Great Pyrenees for livestock guardian dogs. One thing I'll say about it, just remember, the point of what I'm talking about here is that dogs are a predator. Even the Great Pyrenees dogs, they can be a predator if they're not trained correctly. They're not guaranteed to just protect the livestock, and I have seen instances where they really do a number on people's farms. And actually, dogs are the #1 killer of livestock in the United States, is dogs. Not just wild dogs, domestic dogs, but dogs in general are the #1 killer of livestock. So I think a dog's good to have on your homestead. I think it protects the homestead. I think it protects you. I think it's a good friend. I think it's good for teaching responsibility if you're new to animal husbandry. But you know, just keep in mind they are a predator, and you know, you need to make sure they're trained well. And let's see here, what else do I have on the list here? Oh, last thing I was going to talk about for the show today was societal creep. And people are going to ask, what's societal creep? And I mean, when you live off grid and you're trying to live frugally, primitively, away from the world, and you know, away from society a little bit, not everyone's trying to do that, and that's fine. That's their you know, right to do that. It's a free country, and everyone has a right to their freedoms and ways of life. But if you start going to town a lot, and you know, hanging out with some of the people that live more on grid, a lot of times the expensive lifestyle of modern society kind of creeps into your life, and you start to kind of spend more, and sometimes you kind of have to backpedal a little bit and you know, take a step back if you're spending too much money. You know, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with spending money that you have, but you know, it's easy if you're around people spending money to spend the same. You know, if they're going to Silver Dollar City, you end up going with and spending money. You know, it's just an easy way. The more that you're associating with people, sometimes their lifestyles can creep into yours, and you kind of got to take a step back if you're trying to live frugally. You know, if you want to do those things, that's fine. You know, it just costs a little more when you're trying to live off grid, trying to live a frugal and primitive life. Sometimes you get some things that kind of creep in, and you know, nothing wrong with having good friends and neighbors and things like that, but you know, sometimes just budgeting and controlling your impulses to buy. You know, buying can be very addictive. We have a habit of running to the store all the time for everything in modern society. And sometimes that can creep in. You know, like I said, modern society kind of sucks you towards it, kind of brings you towards it, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to live that way, it's a free country. But me personally, my philosophy, I'm kind of trying to be a little more frugal and primitive, and get as much as I can from my land. And I'd like to someday be close to 100% self-sufficient, which I am right now if I live directly off the land, but I'd like the wildlife land, but I'd like to get it to a point of comfortability where I don't really have to get much from the store. I did go to Walmart the other day, and I bought 10 pounds of flour. I bought 30 some pounds of beans. I bought some garlic powder, chili powder. What else did I buy? Some canned fish, tuna, sardines. That's all I bought. I was looking for pickling lime, which they didn't have. I was looking for pool salt, which they didn't have. Oh, I bought lard as well. I bought a big thing of lard, and it's crazy what's going on in the stores. We all see it going on, but I bought probably 10 to 20 pounds of lard, you know, a big old tub of it. And I used to buy a 5-gallon bucket of lard, but they've stopped selling them. They're just not on the shelves anymore. They used to sell a 20-pound bag of beans. They're not on the shelf. I didn't see a section for them. It seems like they've kind of stopped selling all the bulk stuff. The pool salt's gone. You know, it seems like a lot of the stuff that I buy in bulk like that has kind of been disappearing in bulk amounts. And the smaller amounts are 2 or 3 times the price that the bulk amounts were. You know, so I don't know what's going on with it, but I've noticed it myself with some of the dry goods and things that I buy. So, but you know, it kind of ties into talking about this lifestyle creep, buying things in bulk, making as few trips to town as you can, and you're going to have to buy some things, you know, at first, especially until you get your infrastructure built. But the hope is that one day you can get to a point of, you know, complete self-sufficiency. I mean, we're always going to trade and barter and have some things, but I don't know. Just thoughts in my mind about the lifestyle creep, guys. And let me know in the comments if you have any good tips on lifestyle creep, any ways that you like to deal with it, any budgeting tips, you know, as far as it goes. That's all I got for today, guys. Thank you for watching. Appreciate you guys watching the channel. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and God bless. Bailey. See it? See it? See it? See it? Sit. Come on. Sit. 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 Stay. 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 Hey, sit. Sit. Nice catch. You ready? You ready? This is a piece of pumpkin. You ready? Nice catch, dude. You ready? Sit. 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 Nice catch, dude.